Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Burgess, and I'm the Director of Collections and Research here at the Stowe Center. Today, we're gathered to learn more about Isabella Beecher Hooker, the Phrygian style suffrage cap here in the Stowe Center's collection, and how to recreate it. I get the wonderful job of introducing both Isabella Beecher Hooker and Rebecca Bayreuther Donohue, who's here with us over Zoom. So first, I'll start with Isabella. Isabella Beecher Hooker was Harriet Beecher Stowe's youngest sister. She was the ardent female suffragist of the Beecher family. She was one of the last in line, so always felt that she had a lot to reach up to the standards that her older siblings had set in terms of civic engagement and really making a difference in the world. So Hooker was the founder of the Connecticut Women's Suffrage Association. She founded it in 1869, and the very first meeting was held in August here in Hartford. We do know that at the time, Stowe, her husband Calvin, of course Isabella's husband John Hooker, and Henry Ward Beecher were in attendance at that first meeting. But very quickly afterwards, those siblings decided that Isabella's work in suffrage might be too radical for their choice, so they stopped participating. And Isabella, goodness for her, kept going. Isabella Beecher Hooker believed that equal rights through voting was a human right, that it's base level, that we all deserve a chance to vote and play a role in the United States. So for her, this fight became a grassroots effort, but she also played a role in the national level, participating in two ways. So grassroots, she went forward having local meetings in towns like Manchester, Connecticut, up in Bloomfield and Windsor, and really tried to get women to come to town council meetings and have education about science and education, their children's education, and really what role government played in the United States culture. And then at a national level, she became friends with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, as well as Victoria Woodhull. And they were part of the National Women's Suffrage Association, which was separate from the American Women's Suffrage Association out of Boston. So the really divided split between radical, the New York or National Women's Suffrage Association, and the Bostonians is that, women's rights beyond voting, but also women's rights was something that needed to change as well. So that divided really the Beechers, one of the reasons why the Beecher siblings decided not to participate so much with Isabella's version of radical suffrage. So here in the Stowe Center's collection, which is a wonderful large collection of Beecher family ephemera, furniture, holdings, manuscripts, personal libraries, all sorts of things. Isabella Beecher Hooker's collection is one of the largest, and that is because her granddaughter, Catherine Seymour Day, Stowe's grandniece, founded the Stowe Center in 1941. So when she founded it, she donated all the family collections she had pulled together by calling on her cousins, and the Stowe Center since then has collected along those same lines. So the item in the collection we are here to discuss today is this Phrygian cap. It is a very small, I don't know if you can see it better against the white wall here, cap that is meant to be worn front to back, perhaps cocked to the side. I'll leave that to Rebecca to discuss. But it is a beautiful cap, quickly made, put together for some event, but we assume suffrage. And the reason that we assume it's suffrage is because this style really comes in the tradition of a Greek or Phrygian style cap. And that was worn by emancipated slaves in Greece to denote that they've received their freedom. It's often represented on liberty statues, though, of course, the liberty statue on the top of the US Capitol does not have this. But other versions do, like during the 1903 Columbian Exposition, there was a French Liberty statue wearing a cap like this. We also know that suffragists wore hats like this, and one is documented in the 1896 hearing before the Committee on Woman Suffrage speech. So they discuss it, but we're not sure at what event this particular cap was worn. It is assumed to be Isabella Beecher Hooker's cap because it comes down through Catherine Seymour Day's bequest. There's a slight chance that it was worn by Catherine Day, but more likely it's worn by Isabella Beecher Hooker. So there's Isabella and the hat. Now I get the lovely job of discussing and introducing you to Rebecca Bayreuther Donohue, who is our pattern maker and stitcher for the Phrygian cap project. And Rebecca and I have been friends for, boy, over 20 years now. So we know a lot about each other. And what I do know about Rebecca the most is that she will research historic costume like no one else I know. So I am very proud that she's working with us on this project and very grateful as well. So Rebecca's role is at the Mystic Seaport Museum of America and the Sea, is the costume shop manager. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca. And there she maintains 1876 costuming and creates costuming for role players. And I love going down to visit when I can to check out what's new and in season in 1876. So I will move the baton to you, Rebecca, and you get to take over.
All right, sounds good. So what we're going to do today is make a replica of this Phrygian cap that will fit a normal human head. So what we're hoping that you have is the contents of your packet. So you have your pattern and the instructions, some outer fabric, some inner fabric if you're going to do the lining, if you have the project packet that was sent out, or if you're doing this on your own, you have the option of lining it if you have a thin material. The original cap is lined. It is done in a silk that is the most like a modern silk satin duchess, and it is lined in a material that's very much like a coarse linen buckram. So a stiffened, it's a linen that's been stiffened with gum to give a little bit of structure to the cap itself, which is a little bit amusing in and of itself because the nature of the Phrygian cap is to sort of have the unicorn horn of it flopping over slightly. It's supposed to be a soft cap, and there's absolutely no way, as you'll see, that this cap is going to flop. It's very, very solid. So the first thing to do, once you have your materials and you've decided whether you're going to line it or whether you're going to go completely easy and just cut it out of felt and not worry about any of the piecing, next thing to do is cut out your shapes. So if you have a pattern, if you're using something that isn't a straight up replica of the cap materials, and what we've put in your packets is a sort of a reddish, the original is a dark red. The fabric that we have provided for you is a little more wine colored than the original is, but it is the closest that we can find. And what you're going to do is take whatever color basically you've decided you want for your outer And if you have a lining that you'd like to use, and you're just going to cut 2 of each. So both the outer, and this particular example is a lot smaller than the pattern because this is a mock-up of the original cap, not the size cap that you'll be making. And also 2 of the lining. Now you'll see on your pattern that if you have decided to line it with a stiffener like the buckram, you're going to want to add an inch of just fashion fabric lining, just that outer lining. On the original cap, the buckram does not continue down, and this hem is just sort of womped up and covers the edge, but the buckram does not go all the way to the edge and then get folded over with the rest of the material. So on the pattern, you'll see that we're going to fold this edge over neatly so that when you're actually wearing your cap, it won't ravel as badly as the original. So go ahead and cut your 2 of each. If you have decided to do a self-lined and you're providing your own fabric, this is not an option if you have the pattern that the Stowe Center has provided, then what you're going to do is cut here for self-lined cap on this fold. So you're going to omit this extra inch and you're going to cut it. You're going to cut 2 sections. So basically what you're going to come out with once you've unfolded it is this funny shape here where it reflects on itself. If you have decided to completely go the easy route, and I don't blame you, this was my first prototype, then just get some craft felt and go ahead and cut that out. It won't ravel at the edge, and you'll be done after literally the next step. All right. So once that is done, then I'm going to go back to the cap that is completely lined. All right. So you're going to want to put right sides together of the fashion fabric and make sure that the buckram, it has its sides. It's a little hard to tell sometimes with the buckram, and it doesn't matter tremendously because it really didn't matter with the original. What is the right side and the wrong side? Just make sure that the buckram is on the outside, fashion fabric is to fashion fabric, right side to right side. And all you're going to do is sew along the stitch line all the way around. You can do this on a machine if you want. It gets a little tricky getting around the S curve here. It also takes about 30 seconds to do by hand. And the original uses womping stitches of about 1/4 of an inch. See if you can see that. This is the replica, not the original, but we can certainly provide photographs of the original if that is of interest to any of you. The stitches are about 1/4 of an inch, spaced maybe the same distance apart. It sort of varies, but it's just like a big basting stitch that goes around the whole edge. So if you are working with fabric that's lined, go ahead and just sandwich it all together and get that seam in. If you're working with the fabric that is self-lined, you're going to do the same thing, basically turn them right sides to right sides and run the big seam. It's going to be a much bigger seam, but remember, you want to stop before the end because you need a little opening in there so you can turn the whole thing inside out. I have already turned it inside out. So this is the right side that we're looking at. But you got to make sure you get that part of it. So, and you crafty people who are using felt, all you literally have to do is sew up this one seam and turn it right side out, and you're done. Great. You can certainly, once you've turned it out, you can clip the curves to make things lie a little flatter inside your cap. There's no evidence of that being done in the original. So that is completely up to you. Remember, you have rights. So if you have, let me see, let me go back to the self-lined cap for a moment. If you're doing self-lining so that you don't have to finish off any seams, not that the original worried about that at all. All you'll do now that you've turned it right sides out is tuck the lining into itself. So it's got the edge that's going to go around your actual head is bound. It's clean on the inside. All you have to worry about is turning in the edges of the happy little hole that you made so that you could turn it right side out, and just hand do that really quickly. And then you're done. Then you've got a wearable unicorn hat. If you are making the lined version, so you'll do the same thing, turn it inside out. And again, you might decide to trim your edges. You might decide to clip the curves. Again, no evidence of that on the original whatsoever. If you do have this separate lining, then you're going to want to turn, after it's turned in right side out again, you're going to want to turn that extra inch of fabric over the lining. And again, on the instructions that we made up for a modern hat that you might want to wear more than once, we're going to turn over that little, about 1/4 of an inch, you know, whatever is easy for you, and sort of tack that all the way around just to finish off that edge. There, on the original, it is a raw edge, and you can see some of the stitches that I have attempted to replicate also belong to the womping part of sewing. So whether we've talked a lot about this, we've conjectured a lot about whether this was a prototype that was made really as the first iteration of caps that came later and were sized to actually fit people's heads. We've thought about whether this was so small because it just sort of perched on a period hairdo. We've also thought, well, maybe this was the brunt of the proverbial litter, and somebody was, you know, putting a bunch of them out really, really fast and just had to get it done in a hurry before the event. I'm sure none of us have ever had to do that. Another interesting thing about the original that we're not going to worry about in the any of the replicas that we're making, the buckram is slashed at pretty regular intervals, and that extends once in a while to the edge of the fashion fabric, the silk as well. I don't see that it provides any advantage to the cap. I don't know if it was somebody's frantic effort to try and give it a little more spread so that it did fit a normal head. I don't know if it was a piece of scrap buckram that was used to make this. It's hard to tell. We need Isabella back to give us some more info. In any case, once you have your little hat done, then clearly we need to embellish it. So you have pre-cut strips if you have your packet, and if you don't, you can basically use any color ribbon that you would like. The original has is red, white, and blue, as you can see, and the loops themselves are sort of done in the contrasting colors. So ideally, and you'll see in the instructions, ideally you have 3 different colors and one of them matches your fashion fabric lining. And what you're going to do with these guys is make 2 loops, and I'm not bothering to sew these. You may decide that it would be better to tack them down end to end first and then complete the cockade and then sew it to the hat. The ends, believe it or not, are actually tucked really nicely into the hat itself, so it's hard to see without damaging the hat. And then once you have 2 loops of the contrasting fabric ribbon, you're going to take the ribbon that matches the fabric, and it's going to want to be a little longer than the other 2 loops because it will tie a little half hitch in place and basically be the knot of the cockade. And you can fuss with this as much as you'd like in order to get it to look the way it does. That makes you happy. So basically, we've got on the original, there are 2 loops that go up, and I'm going to get, here's the photograph of the original there. So let's do the other side of the hat. So we've got a red loop, and then the blue loops are both up and the white loops are both down, embracing the second loop of ribbon. You can see that this is kind of misbehaving because I haven't tacked it down. So let that be a lesson to all of us. So it should look something like that, but as I said, behaving much better. And it is tacked all the way through both the fashion fabric and the lining. And I can't see any of the stitches from the outside from the cockade being tacked down, which is extraordinary because clearly no one cared that, for instance, these stitches here, which I thought I would have to replicate a more womped exterior seam in order to look more like the original. But you can see because the stitches are just so far apart, it's already doing that. So it was interesting to see the different sewing techniques, but ones with which those of us who have ever had to get something ready under a deadline might recognize pretty well. So with all of that said, by the end of the workshop, you should have a wearable little hat. I have all my little prototypes in classical illustration and both illustrations from the 1790s, from the French Revolution, as well as from the suffrage movement. The way that the cap, that you'll see the cap being worn is various. Sometimes the unicorn horn is pointing forward, sometimes it's pointing to the back. So the point, I think, is to have it and wear it with pride while exercising your rights. Have a wonderful, wonderful voting season.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. I can't wait to make one. and wear it on election day. And then, of course, part 2 of this program is to go and visit Isabella Beecher Hooker herself at her grave, or the ghost thereof, on November 3rd, where you can all wear your caps, after, of course, you voted, and come and see Isabella, chat with her, and leave your I voted stickers as a remembrance for Isabella. So that's November 3rd at Cedar Hill Cemetery in Newington, Connecticut. And I believe the time is 1 p.m., but that will also be on our website. So I would like to take this moment to wrap up by thanking our sponsors, Connecticut Humanities, who funded this project. And of course, as always, the Stowe Center members and the participants of this program. We thank you so much. Welcome your engagement and any comments about the program. Thank you all. Take care.